My grandson gave me a $34 security camera and told me it would make him worry less about me living alone. I almost forgot it existed. Then one Sunday night, I remembered the afternoon my daughter-in-law had offered to clean my bedroom. My son read his own name 3 times before he made any sound at all. I watched his eyes go left to right, the way they did when he was 9 and trying to get through a paragraph he didn't want to be true. Wade has my husband's hands, big knuckles, a burn scar across the back of the right one from a condenser coil in 2011, and those hands flattened that page against the walnut like they were trying to hold it still. "This is a signature loan," he said. His voice came out thin. $19,400. February of last year, I said. Credit union on Charles Page. You were in Wichita that whole week doing the warehouse retrofit. You called me from the motel because the ice machine sounded like a dog dying. He looked up at me, not at her, at me, and I understood in that second that some part of my son had been waiting a long time for someone to hand him a piece of paper that explained his life. Bernardet laughed. I've told this part out loud maybe 40 times now, and every time I say she laughed, people picture something cruel. It wasn't. That's what turned my stomach. It was the laugh she uses at church when somebody's toddler gets loose in the aisle. Warm, forgiving, a laugh that says, "Isn't this a lot? Isn't this silly? Let's all take a breath." "Okay," she said. "Okay." Mama Shirley's been confused for a while now, and I think we all knew this was coming, and I'm not going to be embarrassed about it in front of strangers. She turned to the woman at the end of the table, Yvette Cardoza, the settlement agent from Ridgeline Title, 11 years closing loans in Tulsa County, a lanyard with 3 different building badges on it. "Yvette, I'm so sorry. She's 71 and she left her stove on at Thanksgiving, and honestly, this is why we're doing the loan in the first place, so there's money for care." It was smooth. That's the thing nobody understands about people like her. It was so smooth that for about 4 seconds I could feel the whole room lean her direction, the way a boat leans. Yvette Cardoza did not lean. She had already stopped writing when I put the revocation down. She'd picked it up, read the clerk's stamp, checked the recording number against something on her laptop, and then she'd set her pen in the fold of her folder and put both hands flat on the table, which I have since learned is what a settlement agent does when she has decided that nothing is closing today. "Ma'am," she said to me, "can you state your full legal name and date of birth for me?" "Shirley Ann Fowler, May 22nd, 1954. "And do you have photo identification with you?" I had it out already. I'd had it out since 8:52 that morning, sitting in my car in the parking garage with the engine off, watching the level 3 ramp and rehearsing. She looked at my license. She looked at the copy of the license in her file. Then she did something I'll remember when I've forgotten most everything else. She turned her laptop a few degrees away from Bernardet, very casually, the way you'd move a coffee cup, and she said, "Mr. Ashgrove, we're going to need to step out." Brent Ashgrove was the loan officer. Meridian Home Equity Solutions, a company whose logo is a sunrise over a rooftop, which I now think about the way other people think about a cough they should have gotten checked. He'd been the only person in that room who was happy when I walked in. Big handshake, called me young lady, said the file had been a pleasure. He had a leather portfolio with his initials on it. He looked at the revocation, then at the second page, then at Royce. Royce Tolliver had not said one word since he zipped that case shut. 63, a blazer over a golf shirt, the look of a man who'd been on the losing end of a state audit once and promised himself never again. Her whole family called him Uncle Bud, like somebody's grandpa on a lawn chair. He stood up. "I've got a thing at 11, he said. Nobody answered him. He went out the glass door and it hissed shut on the pneumatic closer, and through the glass wall I watched him walk down that hallway at exactly the speed of a man who knows a camera is watching him walk. That's when Bernardet's face did the thing. I've thought about how to describe it for over a year. It wasn't rage, it wasn't fear, it was a recalculation, like watching somebody's phone lose signal and switch towers. Her mouth stayed where it was. Her eyes went flat and busy at the same time, and she turned her whole body toward Wade, and she reached for his forearm. "Baby," she said, "look at me. She's doing this because I told her she couldn't drive at night anymore." And Wade, my son, 44 years old, who has fixed the air conditioner of every widow on my street for free since his father died, moved his arm out from under her hand. Not fast, not angry. He just slid it back about 6 inches and set it in his lap. She looked at his empty forearm on the table for maybe a second and a half. Then she gathered her purse and she said in a completely normal voice, "I'll be in the car. I need to tell you what I didn't do. I didn't cry. I didn't make a speech. I had one in my head. I'd written it in November on the back of a Walgreens receipt and thrown it away in December because it was garbage. All, how could you, and after everything. Speeches are for people who want to be understood. I didn't want to be understood. I wanted a paper trail. So I sat in that chair at the head of the table and I said, "Ms. Cardoza, I'd like a copy of everything in that file, and I'd like you to note the time." She said, 10:26. And then Brent Ashgrove said the sentence that turned this from a family matter into a federal one. He said, "Mrs. Fowler, I've spoken with you on the phone 4 times. The room got very quiet. "No, sir. I said. You have not. He was already scrolling. I could see it happening on his face, the way a man looks when the story he's been telling himself starts failing in real time. He had call logs. He had a number ending in 417. My number ends in 2288 and has since 1994. That's, he said, and stopped. That's the number on the mailbox application too, I'd imagine, I said. Suite 219, Charles Page Boulevard. He didn't know what to do with his hands. He was maybe 32 years old. He had a wedding ring and a fitness tracker, and I watched him understand that his commission on $142,900 was about to become the smallest problem in his life. I need to loop in our fraud department, he said. Yes, I said. You do. I'll be honest about the parking garage, because skipping it would make me no better than the version of me who handed over her house for 40 minutes. I got to my car and could not get the key in. Not because my hands were shaking, though they were, because I was trying to put my house key in the ignition. I sat there with the wrong key for I don't know how long, then put my forehead on the steering wheel and made a sound I have never made in front of another human being. Then I ate a peppermint from the glove box, almost wrapper and all, and drove home doing 38 in a 45 with both hands at 10 and 2 like a student driver. Wade called at 11:40. He was in the parking lot of the Browns on Wilson. I could hear the drive-through speaker in the background. Mom, he said, where is the loan money? Not, how could she? Not, are you okay? He went straight to where the money was and I thought, there he is. There's Ray's boy. I don't know yet, I said, but I know a man who does, and he's gotten 11 o'clock. Here's what I had that afternoon, laid out on my kitchen table on the placemats Ray bought in Branson. One video from a $34 camera, one credit report with 2 accounts I didn't open, and an address I'd never lived at. 214 pages from a lender, with page 61 circled in pencil. One certified revocation with a county clerk's stamp on it. One police report number, $5, filed in October. And a list of 4 certified letters, 3 of them signed for, 1 returned. Here's what I did not have: a single person in law enforcement who thought this was a crime. I want to say that plainly because when people hear this story now, they hear the ending. And the ending sounds like the system worked. The system did not work. The system had to be dragged. I called the police department the day after the closing and asked to speak to whoever had my October report. It took 9 minutes of hold music to learn that the report existed and had been closed. Not investigated, closed. Disposition code that means, in English, nobody's going to look at this. The officer who called me back was named Kyle Dennard, and he could not have been 30. He was polite. He was so polite. He asked whether any money had actually left my accounts. No. Whether the mortgage went through. No. Whether the person I was describing was my daughter-in-law, living in the same family. Yes. Okay, so this is going to be more of a civil thing, he said. If there's a family disagreement about finances, we really can't get in the middle of that. I have 31 years at the Social Security Administration. I have sat on the other side of that desk and said versions of that sentence to human beings and gone home and eaten dinner. He wasn't being lazy. He was applying a rule that exists for good reasons. Families fight about money, police can't referee an inheritance argument, and my case looked exactly like the thing that rule was written to filter out. The rule is right about 95 cases out of 100. I was the other 5. Officer Dennard, I said, can I ask you one question, and then I'll let you go? Yes, ma'am. The address on my credit file. It's a rented mailbox on Charles Page Boulevard. Somebody filled out a form with the United States Postal Service to open it, using a photocopy of my driver's license, and the statements for those accounts got delivered to that box by a mail carrier. Every month. For 7 months. Silence. That's mail, I said. Isn't it? The Postal Inspection Service does not have a walk-in window. I know because I drove to a federal building with a folder under my arm like a woman in a movie, and a very kind guard explained it to me. So I filed online, waited 11 days, and had begun making peace with hearing nothing, when my phone rang on a Tuesday at 8:14 in the morning. Mrs. Fowler, this is Dale Ivory. I'm a postal inspector out of the Fort Worth Division. I've got your complaint in front of me. 14 years in. Flat West Texas voice. The kind that doesn't go up at the end of questions. He asked me 31 questions, and I have never in my life been happier to be interrogated. The box number. The date the first statement was mailed. Whether I had ever, at any time, given anybody permission to receive mail on my behalf. Then he said, that box has a rental agreement on file with a photo ID attached. When you rent a private mailbox, you fill out a Form 1583, and the operator keeps a copy of your identification. I've asked for it. It'll be my license, I said. It'll be a photograph of your license, he said. There's a difference, and the difference is the whole case. I sat down on the arm of my couch, because I knew what he meant. I'd watched it happen on a $34 camera. She hadn't stolen my license. She'd photographed it on my own quilt, in my own bedroom, at 3:52 on a Sunday afternoon, with the ceiling fan shadow moving across the top left corner of the frame. Inspector Ivory, I said. The ceiling fan. Say again? In the video, my ceiling fan was running. If the photo she uploaded has a shadow across it, it's the same photo. It's the same afternoon. There was a pause on that line that I have replayed in my head more times than I can count. Ma'am, he said, who taught you to think like that? It's the same afternoon. There was a pause on that line that I have replayed in my head more times than I can count. Ma'am, he said, who taught you to think like that? The federal government, I said. 31 years. The footage was the one thing I nearly lost. Micah is 20, goes to school in Tulsa, has worn the same brown hoodie in every photograph taken of him since he was 17. He'd set that camera on my bookshelf between a ceramic rooster and a copy of Roots that Ray never finished. And he said, Grandma, it just records if something moves and it goes to the cloud, and I can check it if you don't answer your phone. He could check it. It was on his account. His email, his password, his phone for the two-factor code. All those months, freezing bureaus, writing letters, reading 214 pages, I'd been carrying that video around in my head as if it were mine. It wasn't. It sat on a server somewhere in the name of a 20-year-old boy who was Bernarday's son. That's the part that still keeps me up. Not the money. That. I drove to his apartment 3 days after the closing and sat on a futon that smelled like Axe body spray and old pizza and told him all of it. The teacup, the 11,000. The mailbox 4 minutes from Uncle Bud's driveway. His father's name on a loan signed during a warehouse retrofit in Wichita. He didn't say anything for a long time. He had a Sonic cup in his hand and he kept turning it. The stove thing, he finally said. What about it? At Thanksgiving, Mom told me about the stove in the car on the way over. Before we got there. She told me in the car so that when she said it at the table, I'd already believe it. He started crying then, and he was furious about crying, which is the most 20-year-old thing in the world. I said, Micah, I need the video, and I need it in a way a lawyer can use. I don't want you to give me your password. I want you to sit with me and do it yourself. And I want you to write down what you did and when you did it. Why does that matter? Because someday a defense attorney is going to stand up in a room and say your grandmother had access to your account and could have edited that file. And I want you to be able to say, no, ma'am, I exported it myself on March 13th at 4:20 in the afternoon, and here's the download log. He wiped his face with the neck of his hoodie. Chain of custody, I said. It's not a TV thing. It's just proving the thing you're holding is the same thing that came off the shelf. We downloaded 4 files, 42 minutes in 4 segments, because the camera cut clips when motion paused. He wrote out a page in pen describing exactly what he'd done, signed it, dated it. Then we drove to the UPS store on Highway 97, made 2 copies on flash drives, and I mailed one to myself, certified and sealed, and never opened it. That envelope sat in my hall closet for 14 months. It became Exhibit 4. Here is where the story stops being about me getting justice and starts being about me trying not to lose everything. Because Bernarday did not run. I expected her to disappear or grovel or hire a lawyer and go quiet. What she did instead was smarter, and I have to give her that because underestimating her is what put my social security card in her camera roll in the first place. She went first. On the 24th of March, a woman named Corliss Duhamel from Adult Protective Services knocked on my door at 10:15 in the morning with a state badge, a clipboard, and a bad cold. Somebody had filed a report of self-neglect and diminished capacity regarding Shirley A. Fowler, 71, of Sand Springs. It alleged I'd left a burner on, accused family members of stealing on multiple occasions, taken out loans I didn't remember taking out, been observed talking to a camera in my bedroom, and refused help from my family. Every item was true in a way that made it false. That's the craft of it. She didn't invent a thing. She took real events and turned them one click, like a teacup. Mrs. Duhamel walked through my house with me. She checked the fridge. She checked the pill organizer on my counter, Ray's old one, Monday through Sunday, and I keep it filled a week ahead. She asked me the date, the year, the president. She asked me to name 3 objects and then asked for them again 8 minutes later. Then she sat at my kitchen table and said, Ma'am, I'm required to ask, is there any family conflict I should know about? I put the 214 pages in front of her. She was there until 2:30 and missed her next appointment. At one point, she called her supervisor from my back porch and I heard one side of it through the screen door. No, ma'am, that's what I'm telling you. She's got a certified recording. Her report came back unsubstantiated. In the box for narrative findings, it says the client presented as fully oriented, the residence was clean and well-maintained, and the reporting party's allegations appear to be contradicted by documentary evidence provided by the client, including financial records indicating the reporting party may be the subject rather than the source of concern. That last sentence took Corliss Duhamel about 11 seconds to type, and it saved my life, because 8 days later, they filed for guardianship. I got served on a Thursday. A young man in a polo shirt handed me an envelope at my front door while I had a bag of birdseed under my arm, and he said sorry, like he meant it, and I stood in my own own driveway and read the words, "Emergency petition for appointment of guardian of the person and estate. Petitioner, Wade A. Fowler, my son's name." Standing there with birdseed, I did not think he betrayed me. I thought, and this is worse, she got him back because she had. 3 weeks of a man sleeping in his own house with his own wife and his 9-year-old asking why daddy was on the couch. 3 weeks of baby, your mother is sick, baby. This is what dementia looks like, baby. I did what I did because I was scared and trying to protect the house, and yes, I made mistakes, but she is going to put me in prison and Presley will grow up without me. Is that what you want? I know that's what she said because he told me later, word for word, in a folding chair in a hallway, and he could not look at me while he said it. The petition alleged I was incapacitated. It attached the APS referral, the referral, not the findings, as an exhibit. It asked the court to appoint a guardian on an emergency basis before any full hearing because I was actively dissipating assets and initiating baseless legal proceedings against family members. Hearing date, Monday 9 a.m., Tulsa County District Court. I got served Thursday at 4:40 p.m. If a judge granted that ex parte order, a guardian would control my finances, my legal decisions, my ability to file a complaint, sign an affidavit, hire an attorney, or press a charge. Everything I'd built since October, the freezes, the letters, the federal complaint, would sit in a folder controlled by whoever the court appointed, and the person recommending the appointment would be the woman who photographed my deed on my own quilt. I had from Thursday evening to Monday morning. I have never in my life been that frightened, and I want to tell you how it showed up because it wasn't in my chest. It was in my mouth. My mouth tasted like pennies for 3 days. I couldn't taste coffee. I made a pot Friday morning and drank 2 cups and couldn't tell you if there was sugar in it. Friday 7:50 a.m., I called an elder law attorney named Joanne Petrosky, 22 years, office above a shoe repair on Boston Avenue. Her assistant said the first opening was in 3 weeks, and I said, please tell her I have a Monday morning emergency guardianship hearing and a certified copy of a revocation I recorded myself at 8:40 in the morning on March 10th. I was put on hold for 90 seconds. Joanne Petrosky came on the line and said, you recorded it yourself? Before the closing? Yes, ma'am. Be here at 11. She was maybe 55, reading glasses on a beaded chain, a Diet Dr. Pepper on her desk at 11 in the morning. She read for 40 minutes without saying anything. She made 3 sounds in that whole time. The last one was at page 61. She took off her glasses. They forged HUD counseling, she said. Yes, ma'am. Not a signature on a family document. A federally mandated counseling session for a home equity conversion mortgage. You cannot get one without it. It exists specifically to stop this. Somebody sat down and manufactured a record of the one safeguard designed to catch them. She put the glasses back on. And you called the agency yourself? In November. I've got the name of the woman I spoke to, the date, and the reference number she gave me. Joanne Petrosky looked at me for a good 5 seconds. What did you do for a living? Claims examiner. Social Security. 31 years. Of course you were, she said, and picked up her phone. Here is what we did in 72 hours. I'm listing it because when I hear stories like mine, the middle always gets skipped, and the middle is where you win or you lose. Friday afternoon, Joanne filed an objection and a motion to strike the emergency designation, arguing there was no imminent risk because nothing had closed and no funds had moved, attaching Yvette Cardoza's file note, timestamped 10:26 a.m., March 10th, Friday, 4 p.m. She called in a favor and got me a neuropsychologist for Saturday morning. Dr. Renata Voss, 26 years, comes in on weekends for exactly this reason. She told me later she does 4 or 5 of these a year, and they're almost always requested by the family, not the elder. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12:30, the worst test of my life. Montreal Cognitive Assessment, trail making, clock drawing, word recall, digit span forward and backward, judgment scenarios. You find a stamped, addressed envelope on the sidewalk. What do you do? A financial capacity instrument where she handed me a checkbook register and a stack of bills and asked me to prioritize them. I scored 29 out of 30 on the MOCA. I lost my point on delayed recall. 1 word out of 5. The word was velvet. I have thought about that word for over a year. I lost a point on the exam that decided whether I'd keep control of my own life, and the word I lost it on was velvet. Dr. Voss wrote a 9-page report. The sentence Joanne read aloud in court was this: there is no clinical evidence of major or mild neurocognitive disorder. Financial decisional capacity is intact and on formal instruments above the demographically adjusted mean for her age cohort. The pattern of allegations in the referral materials is not consistent with the examination findings. Saturday, 3 p.m. I wrote out a timeline, 14 pages, longhand, then typed by Joanne's paralegal on Sunday. Every date, every phone call, every certified mail number. Sunday, 6 p.m. Inspector Ivory called me at home. I told him about Monday. He was quiet for a while. Then he said, I can't testify in a state guardianship proceeding on 40 hours notice, and I'm not going to compromise a federal investigation for a hearing, but I can send your attorney a letter confirming there is an open investigation in which you are the identified victim and not the subject. Will they let her read it? Investigation in which you are the identified victim and not the subject. Will they let her read it? They'll let a judge read it, he said. That's the one that counts. Monday, 9 a.m. Courtroom on the 3rd floor. Beige, fluorescent, a radiator that ticked. Judge Errol Whitcomb, who has a face like a man who has heard every possible lie about money and is no longer entertained by any of them. Bernardet wore navy and a cardigan and reading glasses she does not need. In 18 years, I never once saw that woman read anything with glasses on, and she'd put her hair back in a way that made her look 10 years older and a great deal more tired than she was. She'd brought Presley's school photo in a frame and set it on the table facing the judge. Wade sat next to her in a suit that didn't fit him anymore. He was the petitioner. His name was on it. He had signed it. He would not look at me. Their attorney went first, and he was good. 11 minutes about a family watching a beloved mother decline. The tragedy of paranoia in the elderly. The way suspicion falls hardest on the people standing closest. How a devoted daughter-in-law had absorbed accusation after accusation and still driven her mother-in-law to her eye appointments. He said the word appointments out loud in a courtroom to establish devotion. Joanne Petrosky set her pen down when he said it. She told me afterward that's the moment she knew. She got up and talked for about 4. She handed up the neuropsych report. She handed up the APS findings, unsubstantiated. She handed up the recorded revocation with the clerk's stamp, 8:40 a.m., March 10th. She handed up the title company's termination note, 10:26 a.m., March 10th. Then she said, Your Honor, counsel just told the court that his client drove my client to a medical appointment. I'd like to be very specific about one of those appointments. And she handed up page 61. On September 9th, the loan file states that Shirley Fowler completed her federally required HUD counseling session by telephone at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The counseling agency has no record of that session. No file, no client, nothing. She let that sit for a second. At 1 o'clock on September 9th, Mrs. Fowler was in an ophthalmologist's chair at Vision Associates on 21st Street with her pupils pharmacologically dilated. We have the medical record. We have the billing. And the person who drove her there and sat in the waiting room for the duration of that appointment is the petitioner's wife, who is seated at counsel table. Nobody said anything. Judge Whitcomb took his glasses off, and he did not put them back on, and he looked at Bernardet for what felt like an extremely long time. Then he said, Emergency relief is denied. The petition is dismissed without prejudice. He looked at their attorney. Counsel, I'd encourage you to have a candid conversation with your clients about who's actually a party in interest here. Then he looked at me. Mrs. Fowler, you may go. I stood up, and my legs did not work correctly for the first 2 steps, and Joanne Petrosky put a hand under my elbow like it was nothing, like she was just adjusting her own coat. In the hallway, Wade caught up to me by the elevators. He said, Mom, and I said, and I am not proud of this, but I will not pretend I said something wiser. I said, you put your name on it. She told me it was the only way to stop you from going to prison. Me? She said you'd taken the loans, both of them, that you didn't remember, and that when it came out they'd charge you. And that if we had guardianship first, we could— He stopped. He put his hand over his mouth and held it there. She had an answer for everything, Mom. Every single thing I asked, she had it already. Yes, I said. She did. And then I got in the elevator because I could not stand there one more second, and the doors closed on my son standing in a suit that didn't fit him. The uncle broke in April. I did not do that. I want to be clear. That was Inspector Ivory and a subpoena and a thing about Oklahoma notaries that I did not know until this happened. They are required by law to keep a journal. Every notarization. Date, time, type of document, signer's name, the type of ID presented, and the signer's signature in the book. Royce Tolliver had been a notary since 1998, and he kept his journals in a milk crate in the closet of his home office because he was, at bottom, a man who followed procedure right up until the moment procedure stopped being convenient. They subpoenaed the journals. Entry for October 21st, 11:05 a.m. Durable power of attorney, Shirley A. Fowler. ID, OKDL. Signature. On October 21st at 11:05 a.m., I was at Ascension St. John getting a bone density scan, ordered by my primary care in August, scheduled by their office, billed to Medicare, time-stamped by a machine. But the journal wasn't the thing that finished him. The thing that finished him was Curtis Nakagawa, forensic document examiner, board certified by the American Board of Forensic Document Examiners, 31 years, testified in state and federal court in 4 states. Joanne brought him in on a flat fee that made my eyes water and was worth every dollar. He compared the signature in the journal, the signature on the forged power of attorney, and 11 known samples of mine, bank cards, a mortgage note from 1994, a hospital consent from 2018, my voter registration, and the deed to my house. His report ran 22 pages, with photographs enlarged until you could see the pen pressure, the little pooling of ink where a hand hesitated. And it had one finding I still think is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever written about me. The forged signature had a looped descender on the Y in Shirley, a flourish that swept back under the whole name and finished with a small upward hook. I stopped writing my name that way in 2009. I have arthritis in the base of my right thumb. It started in my late 50s. Somewhere around 2008 or 2009, I quit the loop because it hurt, and my signature got smaller and flatter and more upright, the way old people's signatures do. I never noticed. Nobody notices their own handwriting changing. It's like watching your face age in a mirror. Every known sample of mine after 2009, no loop. The forged POA, dated last October, full loop, perfect. Textbook, because it wasn't copied from anything recent. It was copied from a document photographed on my quilt on a Sunday afternoon, the deed, signed in 2002, loop and all. Nakagawa's conclusion, in the flat language those men use. The questioned signature is not a natural writing of Shirley A. Fowler. Its features are consistent with a simulation executed from a model document predating 2009. She traced my hands from 24 years ago. Royce Tolliver's attorney called the district attorney's office 8 days after the journals came in. Assistant District Attorney Marguerite Salcido runs the Elder Exploitation Unit for Tulsa County. 9 years there, 6 on these cases. She keeps a list on a whiteboard she calls the ones that got away, the cases where the victim died before trial. She told me that at our first meeting, which struck me as a strange thing to say to a 71-year-old woman, until I understood she was telling me to stay alive. Royce proffered, "That's the word." He sat down with his lawyer and the ADA and the postal inspector, and told them what he had, to find out what it would buy him. It bought him a lot because it turned out I wasn't the only one. There were 3 others in that milk crate. Ovella Pruitt, 83, of Turley. Widowed, no children. A church friend of Royce's late wife. $58,000 against a house on 2 acres, and she'd signed some of it herself, believing it was a program to help with her roof. Hoyt Kesterson, 79, Owasso. A HELOC, $31,000, drawn down in 6 withdrawals. Dorothy Mabry, 86, nursing home in Broken Arrow, $12,000 in retail credit. She died in January, which is how Marguerite Salcido got another line on her whiteboard. Total attempted, across the 4 of us, $214,000. The lender had mailed me 214 pages. It doesn't mean anything, numbers do that. But I noticed, and I have never stopped noticing. Bernardet worked the front desk at a title company in Jenks from 2013 to 2015. That's where it came from. She knew what a closing looked like. She knew a reverse mortgage on a paid-off house is the largest pile of money you can pull out of an old woman without her signature on a check. And she knew about the one federal safeguard in the way, which is why she built a fake one. Royce did the paper. She did the people. The charges came down in June. Bernardet Fowler, exploitation of an elderly person or disabled adult, Oklahoma Statutes, Title 21, Section 843.4, 4 counts. Forgery in the 2nd degree, 6 counts. Identity theft, 4 counts. Conspiracy, and in a separate federal information out of the Northern District, mail fraud, 18 U.S.C., paragraph 1341, 3 counts, and aggravated identity theft, which carries a mandatory 2 years consecutive and is the reason her lawyer's face changed. Royce Tolliver pleaded to conspiracy and 2 counts of forgery, agreed to testify, and surrendered his commission. Tamsin Reyes at the Secretary of State's office handled the revocation and called me herself, which she did not have to do. Mrs. Fowler, I've been doing this 11 years and revoked maybe 40 commissions. This is the first one I ever wanted to frame. Brent Ashgrove was terminated by Meridian for cause in April. Not for fraud. He wasn't charged, and I don't believe he knew. He was fired for accepting identity verification he never personally confirmed, and for 4 phone calls with a woman who wasn't me. That's the whole crime of him. He was in a hurry, he was on commission, and it was easier to believe. Yvette Cardoza's file notes from March 10th, timestamped by her software, became Exhibit 11. When the defense tried to suggest she'd been rattled by an angry old woman in her conference room, she said, "No, sir. I stopped that closing because the identification in my file was a photograph, and I'd been looking at it wrong for 4 months." Bernardet took a plea in November. I wanted a trial. Marguerite Salcido sat me down and explained, without softening it, that a trial meant Ovella Pruitt on a witness stand at 83, and Hoyt Kesterson, who by then had some genuine trouble with dates, cross-examined about his memory by a defense attorney whose only strategy was making old people look confused. "They'd do to them," she said, "what she tried to do to you." I said, "Okay, 8 years, 3 to serve, on the state counts. 41 months federal, running consecutive, because aggravated identity theft has to. Restitution, $101,000, joint and several, most of which will never be paid, because that's how restitution works, and anybody who tells you different is selling something. I sat in the second row with Joanne Petrosky on one side and Micah on the other in a shirt with a collar, which he hated. Victim impact. I'd written 4 pages. I read one paragraph. I said, "She didn't steal from a stranger. She sat at my table on Thanksgiving and passed me the rolls and told 13 people I'd left my stove on, and then she watched me pass the rolls back. That's what I'd like the court to understand. Not the money, the rolls." Then I sat down. Bernardet allocuted for 6 minutes. She cried. "I believe some of it was real, which I've made my peace with. People can be genuinely sorry and genuinely the person who did it. Those are not opposites. The money, the rolls." Then I sat down. Bernardet allocuted for 6 minutes. She cried. "I believe some of it was real, which I've made my peace with. People can be genuinely sorry and genuinely the person who did it. Those are not opposites." She said she'd done it because she was terrified of losing everything. Judge Whitcomb said, "Ma'am, that is precisely what you did to 4 people who could not get it back." 14 months later, I still live in my house. It is still paid off. The deed is still in the fireproof box, and the fireproof box is in a different place now, and the key is not in the teacup, and that is the only change I made in that bedroom. I did not move the teacup. People assume I threw it out. Gold rim, hairline crack, my mother's, and it has faced my door since 2002, and it faces my door now. I turned it back the same night I watched the video, before I did anything else, before the credit report, before the freezes. I stood in that room and turned a teacup around, and it is the only thing I did in this entire year and a half that was purely for me. Wade and Bernardette's divorce was final in February. He has Presley most of the time and drives her to Eddie Warrior once a month for visitation, because he says she's still that girl's mother and Presley doesn't get a vote on what her mother did. I think he's right. I've told him so. He and I are not what we were. There's a hitch in it. He put his name on a petition to have me declared incapacitated, and no amount of understanding why makes it not have happened. He came over in September and fixed my compressor and wouldn't take money and cried in my driveway, and I held him and it was real, and it still isn't fixed. Some things you don't fix. You just keep going, and after a while you've gone a long way together, and that turns out to be almost the same thing. Micah changed his major. He's doing accounting now, with something called forensic something or other, and he told me at Christmas very casually, like it was nothing, "I want to be the guy who finds it." Ovella Pruitt and I have lunch the 3rd Wednesday of every month at the Golden Corral on Admiral. Better hearing than me, worse knees, orders the same thing every time. She got $41,000 back. Mine was the one stopped in the room. Hers was stopped by the paper trail mine left behind. She thanks me every single month, and every single month I tell her to quit it, and she never does. The camera is still on my bookshelf, between the rooster and the roots. Ray never finished. It cost $34, and my grandson bought it so he'd worry less about me living alone, and I almost forgot it existed. People ask me what the lesson is. They want me to say, trust no one, or check your credit report, and you should check it. It takes 11 minutes and it's free. But that's not it. She was not a stranger and she did not break in. I opened the door. I said, "Thank you, honey." I gave her my house for 40 minutes because I was taught my whole life that the gracious thing and the safe thing are the same thing. And for 71 years, nobody ever showed me a Sunday afternoon where they weren't. The answer isn't to stop opening the door. I've thought about it and I don't believe it. I'd rather be the woman who says, "Thank you, honey," and gets robbed than the woman who dies suspicious in a locked house. But I do check the teacup. Every night before bed, I walk past that dresser and I look at it, the way you'd check a lock, and it's facing the door, and it always is. And it always will be, because now there's a camera behind it, and I know exactly whose name is on the account.